Welcome back to my channel. I'm excited today to welcome Bradie Speller. So Bradie is a musician, composer, and producer who specializes in percussion, congas, and hand drums, as well as electronic instruments and rhythm programming as well. So Bradie's been on the scene for, I won't count the years, but I'll say since the early 70s at least. Bradie has studied or performed with Cecil Taylor, Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul, Idris Ackamore, and with bands that include the Weather Report, the Pyramids and Tarika Blue, among others. Today, Bradie is taking music a step further while leveraging his many influences through his own band titled Climate Change, meanwhile continuing to join Idris Ackamore and the Pyramids when called upon, including on the 2023 release, Afrofuturistic Dreams. Bradie, thanks very much for taking the time today.
Chris, my pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
So we have a lot of ground to cover, but I have to ask, as probably many have before me, about your early experience at Antioch College. So let me ask you, did you know what you were going to get into when you first showed up on campus, and how did you sync up with Cecil Taylor?
Wow, man, I had no idea what I would be getting into when I got to Antioch. I actually arrived to Antioch in 1970, okay? And I had attended a historically black university in Virginia called Hampton for 1 year. The place was slow. And if I'd stayed there, I'd have been married before I got out of college. So I decided to jet and make my way to Antioch College, who actually was my fourth grade teacher who told me about Antioch College when I graduated from high school and went back to visit her because she had a great influence on my academic career and my leadership career. And she told me about Antioch. So I applied and I got in. I got a partial scholarship. And so when I got there in 70, it was the most radical communist socialist environment you could ever imagine. I loved it. The political science department was heavy. That was my major at poli-sci. I had planned on being a lawyer. But what wound up happening in 1971, a gentleman by the name of Cecil Taylor came in on a 2-year, I think it was a Rockefeller grant, a big program that Rockefeller gave them. It was like $500,000 or whatever it was for 2 years. And they brought Cecil in with his unit, the Cecil Taylor unit, which consisted of Jimmy Lyons and Andrew Cyril. And he had a few other musicians and dancers with him that were part of his ensemble. And he created the Black Music Ensemble at Antioch College. And he had actually come to Antioch from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. So he had a program up in Madison, and then he came down to Antioch, and people from Madison actually followed Cecil to Antioch College. I loved music. I had gotten turned on to Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Clifford Brown and all those old school guys, Charlie Parker. I'd gotten turned on to them before I came to Antioch. But when I found out that Cecil was coming, that's when I decided to start playing music. So I started actually playing the drums, borrowing a drum from the dean of students, a guy by the name of Chuck Smart, who taught me my first few rhythms. And I stayed in my room. I practiced for a while until I got up enough nerve to go out on Sunday mornings with the rest of the drummers on campus. And that's when I really started playing. And before you knew it, man, I was gone.
So what was Cecil's approach to teaching music on campus and I guess encouraging creativity from his students? Because he was already so accomplished at that time. And I'm wondering if he was teaching a curriculum or if he was trying to extract, something from his students.
I say both, Chris. At the end of the day, Cecil did have a curriculum. I mean, we had actual workshops and we had classes where we were learning about music. And we were learning about the history of music. We were talking about, he was breaking down all the different genres of music, whether it was jazz, whether it was blues, going all the way back to the old Negro spirituals out in the fields. He broke down rock and roll. He broke down James Brown. Cecil was a master. He wasn't just an out player. He was a master of music, and he was an intellectual. So, you get somebody like that to come into an organization like Antioch and deliver workshops on a weekly basis inside the classroom. But then also when we practice with Cecil, and we practice 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and we typically did a show once a month on campus at Kelly Hall, but he drew out of people. Now, he gave us a platform to work from. Cecil would write out music, but he didn't do musical notation. Cecil did road maps. And it was weird because he would have like A sharp and he would write A sharp, F minor, B flat major, and he would write his words out. He would write the stuff out. And when you looked at it, it looked like it was a journey map that was taking you someplace. And so he gave them the music, but he also allowed for a lot of improvisation. And I think Cecil's method was to not only teach, but to also lead the way. And he would often grab some of us one-on-one, bring us into Kelly Hall and do one-on-ones with us, where he would just sit down at the piano and start playing. And then we would start playing with him. And sometimes we'd go for an hour, 2 hours straight. It's crazy, man.
Wow. So you mentioned that that you were kind of, once you got up the confidence, that you're playing drums with other drummers on campus. So was that the origin, I guess, of the Pyramids, or how did you meet Idris Ackamore?
Okay, so Idris got there the year before I did. He got there in 69. I came in 70. So we were buddies on campus already. Okay. And Idris had just really picked up the saxophone and started playing the saxophone. And interesting thing, cause when I was in my dorm room, Idris would come by and I'd have Cecil playing and he'd say, yeah, man, that's some heavy music you listening to. I was like, yeah, I know. You listen to him too, don't you? So we were all in anticipation of this maestro master coming to our school to be able to learn from him and to play with him. And for 2 years straight, I mean, from the day Cecil came to the day he left, I was in his ensemble. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, Idris and I were hanging out. He had a group called The Collective at first. Then he spent a few months with Cecil, with the Black Music Ensemble. Then him and another partner and his lady, Margot Kimati and Idris went on an international students tour. They went to Europe first, and then they went to Africa. And they stayed for about 8 or 9 months and then came back. And when they came back, they had formed the Pyramids, and I joined the Pyramids at that time in 1972.
Okay, wow. So I guess real quick, and I know something of this, but maybe not that much. My understanding is that Cecil Taylor's presence on campus after a couple of years was becoming more problematic by the administration, and that he was essentially told to go. Or was that the case, or was his contract up?
His contract was up. Now, but I think they left out on bad terms. I don't know all of the details around it. But I think one of the things that happened was Cecil had this following of musicians that followed him from Madison, okay? And a lot of these young folks were staying in a dilapidated building that was actually condemned on campus. It was called South Hall, okay? But Cecil didn't ask them to come. They followed him there. And they just happened to go in and cohabitate in this dilapidated building that didn't have power, didn't have running water, none of that, because the building was supposed to be condemned. They were going to tear it down, but they wouldn't tear it down while these students were staying in there, right? So what is Cecil supposed to do? He's supposed to tell everybody to get out, go home, go back to where you came from. This wasn't his problem. But I think that he may have been also looking for, and I don't want to say this because I don't know for sure, but he may have been looking for some more money from the school because of the amount of work that he was actually doing. Okay. He was going above and beyond, man. I think he went way beyond what his contract called for. But at the end of the day, he had about 40 or 50 musicians who came through there who have been touched by his life forever. Yeah.
Wow. That's some orchestra kind of cohabitation going on right there. You know what I mean?
Some of these guys will come to rehearsals and say, "Yo, man, go out to Yellow Springs and get a bath, dog."
So, to my understanding, the first album that was released that you played on was I think the 1973 release of Lala Bella.
1972.
I'm sorry, what's that? 72.
It's 72 or 73.
It could very well be 72, or maybe it was recorded in 72 and then put out in 73. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
And that's you on there, huh?
Look, I had hair. I had a beard. That's
So there was,
Idris, Margot, Kimathi. Marcel Lytle was the son of Johnny Lytle. Johnny Lytle was a great vibraphonist
yeah,
from Springfield,
absolutely.
Ohio. And it was Marcel, and then myself, and then Masai, Tony Owens, a guy by the name of Tony Owens. He had Tony Chihuahua Owens, great sax player. So we had two sax, flute, bass, percussion, drums.
Very, yeah, very cool. So Lalibela, and then the next one was King of Kings, and I think that was the following year. And I was, again, I hear things lore about some of these albums, and what I heard about this one is that it was a marathon late night session. Is that right?
Yeah. It was we drove all the way up to this guy's house in Chillicothe, Ohio, way out in the woods, man. I mean, the dude must have been a hermit, okay? But he had a studio at his house, and we got there in the evening. And when I tell you, we probably stayed up all night recording that album because we had one shot to get it. Okay, because we were not driving all the way back up to Chillicothe, Ohio. It was the winter time. We drove up there, we knocked it out, and turned around and came back. And it was some of the greatest music that we've ever played, man. And that was the second album that we did called King of Kings.
Yeah, wow. So what was it like playing in that format? And I guess what I mean by that is such a rhythm focused unit, it seems, and obviously you mentioned that some of these guys went to and girls went to Africa and then came back and probably brought with them some of that knowledge, that study that they had there. What was it like for you, I guess, playing in in that type of format?
A lot of it was heavily reliant on me, believe it or not, the rhythms. Okay. Donald Robinson came and played on the second album. They met Donald over in France, and a guy by the name of Frank Wright introduced Idris Akamora and everybody to Donald Robinson. And so Donald hooked up. He did not go to Africa with them, but when they came back to the United States, Idris called on Donald and said, "Hey man, why don't you come to the U.S. and stay with us in Ohio and be a part of the band?" So Marcel was out. Donald came in. And I got to tell you, Donald's playing was not pocket playing. Okay, I mean, if you're hanging out with Frank Wright in Canada, and if you know who Frank Wright was, he was that boy. You think Cecil was out?
Yeah, so Frank Wright had he was recording for ESP, I believe, which was Bernard Stallman's label, and kind of notorious for some of those more outside the box players.
Yeah, Sonny Chirac, Frank Wright, I mean, and other players, man, some of that stuff, I was like, woo. I met Frank Wright in New York, by the way, man. I'll tell you about that story in a minute. But when the Pyramids, a lot of it was heavy rhythm because it was African, and I had been playing the congas. And now, remember now, I spent almost 2 years with Cecil. So I'm the only percussionist in the orchestra of about 30 some odd musicians, and I'm holding it down with two little congas and some percussion, and I'm holding it all down. And Cecil allowed me to really just be able to play what I feel. As a matter of fact, he told me day one, he said, "Bradie, play what you hear." And that's what I did. And so I got pretty, I would say powerful on the congas at that time. And so when you hear some of those songs like Ensarama, and there's another one, there's several on there. There's a really heavy percussion, real fast, real up tempo. I mean, I'm driving a lot of stuff, and then Donald comes in with a lot of the out stuff on the drums. Mm-hmm.
That's where those calluses come from, then, huh?
Yeah, brother. Let me tell you something, man. I have split my fingers and bled more than once. So far, so good. I still got them all, though. And that's why you see me wear white tape around my fingers when I perform.
Yep.
I do not go on stage and perform unless I got this white tape, because then it keeps the skin from splitting and blood being all over the place,
Yeah. So I'd heard that the Pyramids was a very kind of DIY kind of experience in terms of the band members taking on sort of some of the responsibilities, I guess, I don't know, of running things or of shows that you would do, maybe not unlike, again, back to the orchestra. So I guess, what does that entail as a group of students who are trying to play music, release albums, go on tour? Was there a manager, or did everybody kind of pitch in, or how did that work?
Everybody pitched in. And we did not have a manager. Um, Idris, Margot, Kimati were like the three that came back over from Africa. So they were like a real tight unit. And myself. And so I used some of my contacts to get gigs. Idris had contacts to get gigs. Most of the stuff that we did was at the college. Okay. And then in 1973, through a mutual friend of mine named Rick Cardell, Rick had a buddy that owned a head shop back in the day, a head shop in Dayton, Ohio. And he took me by there, and that guy was thinking about bringing a weather report to town. And I told Rick, I said, man, one day I'm going to play with Weather Report. And wound up in November of 1973, they brought Weather Report in. The Pyramids opened up that show. I helped to get that show set up. And we did that show, man. And then next thing I know, Joe Zawinul is coming up to me and saying, hey, man, I like the way you play. When I give you the signal, bring your shit out on stage. Let's go. I'm like, yeah. I mean, those were his exact words, okay? I didn't make that up. That's his exact words.
Wow. So 1973, November, what I'm thinking about is that Weather Report had put out their first couple of albums, probably one of the most influential, I'll say, jazz, bands at the time. It's sort of carrying the direction of Miles Davis's work in electronic music. But obviously, compositional chops of Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul, Miroslav Vitis was with the band, I think, at that time.
Yeah.
So that's how you got the opportunity. Zawinul came up to you and was like, "Hey, you want to hop on stage?" So that must have been an amazing experience for you.
Well, here's the thing, my friend. I had predicted that was going to happen 13 months beforehand. Let me tell you a little cosmic secret, okay? In 72, when Cecil was still around, I went back home during the summertime to work. And me and my brother were both playing percussion. I had a cousin that took me to a record shop, and I had found out about Weather Report when I was in Europe the first time in 1971. Okay. Heard Weather Report's first album, heard the second album, and I picked up that second album. It was called, I Sing the Body Electric. When I put the record on the spin on the record player, and I heard some rhythms that I'd heard Cecil play. So it was like code. Zawinul played the exact same line on a song called Vertical Invader. And when I heard it, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, man. So I started connecting the dots. My brother came downstairs, heard it. I told him, I said, Mel, I'm going to play with Weather Report. You're going to play with Herbie Hancock, because I bought the Weather Report album. I bought the Herbie Hancock Crossings album, and I bought the James Brown album. There it is. I bought those 3 albums one day and sat down and listened to it, broke the code down, because I'm already being trained by Cecil. This is not just playing music. It's about mathematics. It's about science, about cosmic. It's about code. And when you hear the codes, you got to, you know what to do. And sure enough, that was in July of 1972. In November of 1973, the gig with Weather Report happened. Boom, I'm on stage.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the story that, I haven't told a lot of people, but my family knows, and people who are close to me knows. And all the guys at Antioch College knew that I kept saying, I'm going to play with Weather Report one day. I'm going to play with Weather Report one day. I'm going to play with Weather Report. But they're like a broken record. And then when it happened, everybody in the audience was like, holy shit, this guy is actually playing with Weather Report.
So what was what was the connective tissue then between, so you had this opportunity to play with Weather Report, and then not that long after, you had the opportunity to play with Herbie in, I think, New York, right? So
2 weeks later. That's right.
2 weeks later.
2 to 3 weeks later, because the first time I played Weather Report was on November 3rd, 1973. And then Herbie came to New York because my brother, watch this. This is how, when you speak things into existence, is real. My brother was at Queens College in New York, and Herbie came to Queens College to do a workshop in November. And Melvin met Herbie, And Herbie said, hey, man, why don't you guys come on out to my show? I'm going to be at a place called My Father's Place in Roslyn, Long Island. So what happened? I'm playing with Weather Report. I go home for the holiday, for the Thanksgiving holiday. Melvin hooks up with Herbie. Herbie says to come out to this club. We go out to the club. We meet Herbie. I tell him I'm playing with Weather Report. He says, well, why don't you guys bring your gear after Thanksgiving? This was on a Wednesday. We went to see the show. He was there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He said, why don't you guys bring your gear on Friday and sit in? So it was like 2 to 3 weeks after my first gigs with Weather Report. Now I'm on stage with Herbie. And Herbie's album, The Headhunters, was the first Headhunters album, man. Epic album. Still epic to this day.
Absolutely. That's a hell of a tour to jump in on it right after the release of Headhunters.
Man, let me tell you something. Benny Maupin, Herbie Hancock, Mike Clark on drums, Paul Jackson on bass, and Bill Summers was not there, the percussionist. Bill Summers was not there, so that's why Herbie said, come on and bring your stuff in and sit in with us. And we sat in on Friday and Saturday night. And what I didn't know is that we'll become a lifelong friendship with Herbie. Herbie's been a mentor and a friend of mine for November was 50 years. We're still in touch with one another to this day. Yeah. He just sent me a friend request on Facebook. So Herbie, you gonna send me a Facebook request?
He's just getting around to it.
He's getting around to Facebook. He's having fun though, man. So yeah, I got to tell you, Chris, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history, man. I've been that guy in the background, but now it's time to come out, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so one more point that I want to make sure I bring up, and then I definitely want to talk about your current plans, because I'm really excited about that, even selfishly, because it means that I get to go hear some great music. But the last thing I wanted to touch on, mostly because I went through the trouble of digging this out, so I had to put it up. So Tarika Blue, the Blue Path, and I just put this on yesterday, right? Because I'm prepping, and Blue Neptune is the first track on side one. And the congas are like right at the very beginning of Blue Neptune that open it. And I have to imagine that that's you. It sets such this like atmospheric kind of organic vibe that continues throughout the album. I'll have to say, this is one of my favorite albums of what I'll call it for now fusion, even though I know that's a controversial term. But it's just a phenomenal album. You got Ryo Kawasaki on this thing. You got Marvin Blackman, who played later with Rashid Ali. You've got Phil Clendenin, who had some credit on some other Kawasaki albums, as well as playing with like James Mason and Sam Morrison. I mean, this is like such a collection of musicians. It's just to some degree, like right before, you know, a lot of them did so many other exciting things as well. So how did this group come together? How did you meet these guys and come together?
Okay, so Cecil left in 73. I graduated in 74. The Pyramids, I ended my stint with the Pyramids then because I was from New York. I moved back to New York, after I graduated from college. Idris, Margot, and Kimati decided to go to California. I wasn't going to California. I was like, okay, guys, y'all got it. That's when they picked up Kenneth Nash on percussion and another guy named Hashima on bass. So they were doing the thing out in California. I went to New York. I had a dear friend of mine who lived in a couple of towns over, invited me to go hear this group called Tarika Blue because she knew I was playing music. To go hear Tarika Blue in New York. And so we went to, I can't remember whether it was the Vanguard. It was one of those small clubs, but it was great. Those guys were killing. They were killing. And it was Marvin Blackman. It was Phil Clendenin on keys, Marvin on sax, Kevin Atkins on drums, and Barry Coleman on the bass. Okay. And so after the show was over, I walked up to the drummer and I started talking with him. I was like, yo, man, you guys sound great, man. He said, yeah, man. Pam was telling me, man, you play music too. You play percussion. I said, yeah, you know, I did a little stuff with Cecil Taylor and Herbie Hancock. And he was like, okay, give me your number. You know, it's like, and so they wound up calling me. I go into the city 2 or 3 times a week. We're rehearsing. And then the next thing you know, man, that band is starting to take off. We were the up and coming band in New York. in 74, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? And I got to tell you, playing with those guys, man, was just pure dynamite because we would open up the show for Milt Jackson, Art Blakey, Betty Carter. Okay?
Wow. Yeah.
Right, right. We were opening up shows for them. And then we did our own thing at a place called Cammie Hall, which is right next door to, across the street from Carnegie Hall. So we were doing the Bottom Line. We were doing the Village Vanguard. We did all those gigs, man, because we had a manager that was handling this guy named Arnie Perez. Arnie's still doing gigs in New York City, man, to this day. He calls them Sunday Serenade. God bless our Arnie. Shout out to Arnie Perez. You know? So Arnie really got us a lot of work. And then he hooked us up with this guy, Chiaroscuro Records. This Hank, can't remember Hank's last name. But anyway, Hank was the owner of the label, and he brought us in to record the Blue Path, Blue Neptune, and oh, by the way, so Rio Kawasaki came after me. When Rio hit the band, we went to another level.
Yeah, he's phenomenal, and you can see my carefully placed album of Rio right over here. Yeah, that's for you.
Man, let me tell you something, boy. I gotta give a shout out. May he rest in peace. Rio Kawasaki was a peaceful soul until he got on that guitar. When he got on that guitar, he turned into a monster. The guy was Jimi Hendrix all over again from Japan. I never heard anybody play the kind of riffs, the kind of notes, and the patterns, and the tonality and the timbre that he had. We were surprised to be able to get Rio to even join the band. But once he joined, he was in. He was all in. I'd go up to his house in Manhattan, man, and me and him would just record stuff. Me, him, and my brother Melvin. You know? So no, that's the kind of guy he was, man. Beautiful guy. Beautiful guy. May he rest in peace. Yeah.
So we've been focusing, I know, on a lot of history, but let's talk about now. So you lead a band here in Atlanta called Climate Change that I've had the pleasure now of seeing a few times. When did you put this group together? And I guess, how would you describe your approach to music today?
Okay. So, I've always had the dream, Chris, of having a band of musicians that were some of the most talented men and women that I could find on planet Earth. Okay. Because of my training with Cecil, the cosmic relationship with Miles, Herbie, Wayne, Joe, Alphonse Mouzon, Damo Ramao, I knew that I couldn't just have a band of just band guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a bazillion bands out there. How do you distinguish yourself? You distinguish yourself from your heart and from the spirit. And the spirit and the heart that I gained from being around those men early on in my career, even though I didn't go pursue music as a full-time job, until recently. So like in 2016 is when I formed Climate Change, the first version of it. As a matter of fact, this is the CD that we put out. It's called Beams of Light. Okay. And this was the first iteration of the band. We played, this is all original music on this album. All originals. Walter Bland, great pianist, and myself, we wrote most of the music. And I came up with the money because I was working the job. I put the money together. I went to the studio with everybody, said, okay, let's go. Let's do it because we could talk about it all day long. But if we don't do it, it'll never happen. So I wound up releasing this in 2017. It was a do-it-yourselfer. It was never been promoted by anybody. I got it on Apple, Spotify, and all those platforms. And it didn't go anywhere because it doesn't have any promotion budget behind it, right? Larry Jackson, who's a sax player on this album, is the only guy that's still with me right now, okay? And Larry and I have developed a bond and a relationship that's eternal. And he's like, in my personal opinion, he's in the line of Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, okay? And Kamasi Washington came later. Larry Jackson is 65 years old. Larry's a bad boy. People are sleeping on Larry. I didn't. And so when Larry and I decided to come and put this thing back together again, it's been off the chain. So 2017, we took a hiatus for 5 years. And then in 2022 is when I put together the newest iteration of Climate Change, which consists of myself, Larry Jackson on sax, Ramon Puzer, excellent bass player from New York. Ramon's a bad boy, man. Y'all don't know. And then we had Emrah Kotan on the drums. And then I had Andy Nevela on keyboards. Okay. So, and then we added Barry Richmond. Barry Richmond on guitar. Barry is like a rock god. Okay. And so Barry brings that blues, rock, fusion flavor to the thing, man. Really just takes us to a whole nother level. I won't have Barry on Thursday night because he's got another gig going, but Barry's a part of the band. And, but the band, I said the only way I could distinguish it is it had to be Bradie Speller and Climate Change, because if you Google climate change, you're not going to get this. You're going to get all the stuff on climate change, right? So everybody understands that that's the only reason I put my name out there. But I have always had the dream of being able to put together some of the top cats in the world to play music. So we do covers now just so that people will get to know who we are and what we're capable of doing. But we got an arsenal of original songs that we're about to drop. So we're going to drop all original songs this year on the EP, probably like 6 or 7 pieces. That's it, because that's all people are going to listen to anyway. They might listen to 1 or 2, but I got some great music. Mainly, I did most of the writing, but the guys take the blueprint and then they just add this stuff to it, and it just becomes magic.
Yeah, so you're right about you've done it. You've built that group that is amazing. I mean, Barry is one of those musicians you just, like, your mouth just like drops open while you're listening to him. Ramon is fantastic bassist. Like, each of the shows that I've been to and I'm watching him play, I'm like, this guy is amazing. Larry Jackson, like you said, I mean, the whole group, everybody is such a stellar musician, and to see it all come together is just so exciting. Plus the fact, and we haven't even talked about this, is we've been talking about you as a drummer. You've been getting into, or I say getting into, you've been doing electronic music for quite some time, and I don't even know what machine you have up there that you're adding to, because you're simultaneously playing the congas, but then you also have some other type of device, right?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I've got the first iteration of what's called a Roland Hand Sonic. Okay, that's this baby right here. 360 patterns and sounds of drums from around the world. I can go from Africa to Latin to India to Asia to big band. I could go to, and a whole bunch of patches for electronic sounds that enhance the music and put sweetness to it. Okay. So this thing right here, now see, here's the thing. I was looking for something like this in the 70s. There was no such thing. Okay. Because when I was sitting next to Zawinul at Weather Report, he had a bank of synthesizers, the Moog, the Oberheim. He had all that original stuff along with the Fender Rhodes keyboard. And Joe would be twisting more knobs than Joe was twisting more knobs and playing keys, but it seemed like he never missed a beat. He was like, you know, and I'm sitting next to him and I'm thinking, man, I'd like to be doing something like that on percussion. Roland came out with this instrument called a Hand Sonic, and this is the original prototype. I've had it for over 20 years and it still is amazing. I might break down and buy the new one if they've got some new sounds in there. But as far as I'm concerned, if I got Latin, African, Indian, Asian, orchestra, drum patches, dance, sound effects, and others, and loops, what else do I need? I got it all right here.
And it's interesting how you use it too, because in some situations you're using it almost as a supplemental rhythmic instrument, but then in others you're sort of augmenting or adding texture to other musicians' solos, right? Exactly. So you'll kind of like pepper some of that in, and it just adds a really interesting, I think, character to a lot of the music that you play.
You know, I remember I was looking when I was working at Record Plant in New York and then in Los Angeles. When I first came out to Los Angeles, there was a thing that came out called the snare. And that's when you started hearing the pew, pew, pew. on the disco stuff. Pew, pew, pew. It's like you hit it with a stick and it gives you that, that sound. But it was very limited in terms of what it could do, the capabilities. So Roland really went forward on this one. And now you got all the beat pads and you got, um, I forgot the name of half of them because I don't use them at the end of the day. This does everything I need, quite frankly. I don't need any other beat pads and all that kind of stuff. This is all I need. Between that and what I do with all my drums, I got djembes, I got congas, I got my old Valjes from 1976. They're in storage right now, but I've been playing LPs now for the last 20, 22, 23 years.
Yeah. So what is that reminds me. So you talk about an EP coming out. I guess what's the timing on that, and what's the format? Are you going to be doing a digital release? Or are you going to do a physical release? Like, what's the plan?
You know what? Depends on the budget. right now we're going to do a digital release. Okay. It's going to be onto all the platforms, but I'm thinking about having vinyl copies done, limited edition. Okay. And I'll make sure you get a copy, buddy. Okay. Cause I know you love vinyl, right?
I dabble.
Hey folks, this guy's got 4,000 records up. Come on, man. Dabble my foot.
No, that's very exciting. I mean, here's the thing. I know that first and foremost, right, it's the music, but there are a lot of folks in this space that either are, well, you typically both, right? They're trying to absorb as much of the music of the past, but they're also trying to support all the exciting musicians today, because right now, I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to say that, now is better than, say, any particular year, but there's so much amazing music coming out all the time. That's brand new stuff, brand new musicians right now, right, that there's just a lot of energy for, hey, I want to support that musician. I'd love to have a physical, the physical media kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, Chris. So I think about it. And, if I had a record label behind me, would be the next thing, I'm sure that they would insist on putting the vinyl together, because particularly in Europe, they love the vinyl track. I couldn't sell CDs now if you tried. Okay, I got 5 of them left. That there'll be 5 here till the day I'm gone, right? So, but the vinyl stuff is hell. I got a decent collection, about 400 or 500 albums here myself that I've kept over the decades. But I'm thinking about going ahead and getting a limited edition of the vinyl tracks for this one, and I'll put that out along with the digital stuff. Okay, but the timing, we have a song that you'll hear on Thursday night called "Here We Go Again." I wrote that one 1:00 in the morning, and it's a really funky, upbeat kind of a thing, man. It's a catchy phrase. Everybody loves it. I've done another one that's more percussive and more drum-like. It's called "I'm from Brooklyn." And that one, it reminds me of the days when I was growing up in the projects in Brooklyn and hearing all the different musics and going from one community to the other, whether it was in the Hispanic community, the Jewish community, Black community, Caucasian, the Irish, the Polish. You go to New York, you got everybody in these different sections. And every time you go down the street, you hear the music, right? And it didn't matter because it was the rhythms, it was the melodies, it was the sounds that remained in my spirit. So "I'm from Brooklyn" will take you around the world, quite frankly, from the Casbah to China to India and then to Europe and then back here to the United States. Then there's a couple other songs up there. We've got one that I dedicated to Herbie, calling it Herbie. And it's funky, of course. And there's some others up there. So we're going to have about 5 or 6, 7 pieces on this album. We'll be finished with it before the end of spring. Okay. And so we're going to drop it before summertime hits. As a matter of fact, several of them are ready to go. So I'll just go ahead and drop "Here We Go Again" probably within the next few weeks. I'll keep you posted on that. With the band is a very special band. We got a new keyboard player. His name is Maxwell Estes. He's a Gen Zer. I don't think he's 26 or 27.
Wow.
He's coming. He's an up and comer, man. Okay. So I met his mother at a Super Bowl party last year. I brought him on to do a couple of gigs with me, and I've just been blown away, and Larry's been blown away. The whole band has been blown away by this young man. And he's like a music director. He studied classical music. And he's just a great personality. You're going to get a chance to hear him on Thursday, along with another drummer, a new drummer that we have by the name of Yaku Ngusen from West Africa. Okay. Yeah.
Very cool. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So, yeah, man, come on out and see us. It's going to be at the Perfect Note, which is in Marietta on Windy Hill Boulevard. We're going to start the show at about 8 o'clock on Thursday night. Tickets are $28. Go to Perfect Note ATL. Get your tickets. Come on out. There's a great venue. Holds about 100, 150 people. Sound is great. The stage is big. The food is wonderful. Cabaret style tables, man. And I mean, it's a first class place, and they've only been open like about 6 months, if that. So,
Yeah, that's right. And you can even get a cocktail or two there as well.
yeah. Good cocktail too, not watered down. They're good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I'll just kind of add in closing that, obviously highly recommend. I'm going to be at that Thursday show, and, subscribing to the Perfect Notes, sort of social media, as well as the Velvet Note, which is another venue in Alpharetta that Bradie sometimes plays at. Those are good ways to stay on top of things. And then, obviously, subscribe to or follow Bradie on Instagram. He's at
And
Bradie
YouTube.
Speller, and I'll put it on the thing. And otherwise, if you want to find some of those classic recordings, they're actually that Bradie played on. You can get the Strut Records reissue of the entire Pyramids 1970s discography. So that's another great place while you're waiting for that EP to drop. So thanks very much, Bradie, for taking the time. This has been fascinating, and I'm sure fascinating to all of the listeners out there.
Man, Chris, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, man. You're a good friend of mine, and we're going to keep it moving, okay? Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. God bless you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time.